One of the most disturbing elements of the Prohibition War is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows the futility of prohibition and reaches out to educate the community and current law enforcement. Today, the Russ Belville Show visits with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition with one clear message: cops say legalize drugs.
Welcome back, everybody. 29 after the hour, and I'm excited to have our next guest on. He's been a guest on the show before, and one of my favorite activists in the Lone Star State. Larry Talley is with us from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Larry, welcome back.
Hey, Russ, it's good to be back. Thank you.
Yeah, so glad to hear from you, and, you're calling us down. Are you still down in Flower Mound, Texas? Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, right smack dab in the middle of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Okay,
and that brings me to last night. I was watching the Twitter feeds coming from Texas Normal and from DFW Normal regarding testimony for a medical marijuana act, I believe it was, and I guess it ran into like midnight or later, your guys' time, and the report I got was that there was nobody testifying in opposition to this. Do you have any updates or anything on this for us?
Yeah, I believe there were 38 people that were professionally providing testimony to the Texas legislature, specifically the committee that has that bill in their laps. And you're right, there was nobody that spoke in opposition. These were just regular Texans, people just like you and me, people that are listening to your show, just average people that were giving really good testimony to the Texas legislature. We were really excited about it. I believe the leads were there as well. That would be, Mr. Lee from out in, California. I want to say the...
Richard Lee's parents, Ann Lee.
Richard Lee.
Yes.
Ann Lee. Yeah, thank you. So they were there as well, and I didn't get an opportunity to go. Unfortunately, I had to work, but I got the reports back, and I read them too, and I talked to some folks that were there, and it was really positive news.
Yeah, and...
but this is...
One of the reports I got from one of my...
though, we haven't had anybody speak in opposition to any bill that we brought into the committee yet. Into any committee, we've had a couple of bills that have gone through. It's this is a good sign of the times, though. It really is, that things are beginning to change, even here in the Lone Star State in Texas. Yeah,
and how is this being reflected in the legislature, though? I mean, we get a situation. I just came back from Idaho where 75% of the people support medical marijuana, but the state goes and votes on a resolution saying, hell no, we'll never legalize medical. Is there a same disconnect in Texas between the people and the elected officials?
There is a big disconnect. I don't believe that it's the same. I've been reading the news in Idaho, too, and I refuse to believe it's the same because these legislatures, these guys that are down there, these folks that are representing us, they are our neighbors. I've talked to my legislature till I'm blue in the face. He's slowly coming around, and he's slowly coming around because other people have talked to him, too. The more people that go to the legislatures, at least from what I've noticed here in Texas, there is a disconnect. Don't get me wrong. We still have a very similar polling numbers, poll right between 70 and 75% for medical marijuana, between 40 and 50% for flat-out legalization. I think it's respected around the country, but I do notice that the conservative legislature isn't representing the will of the people yet. But it's not as bad as it is there.
What are there any sort of inside Texas politics things that are holding this up? I mean, for example, we look at New Jersey, and obviously there's a lot of pharmaceutical companies in New Jersey, so that affects the politics of how medical marijuana is implemented there. Are there oil or banking or any type of big lobbies, perhaps prisons and sheriffs that are holding this up in Texas?
If they are, they're doing it in such a surreptitious way that we're unaware of it. Honestly, I believe it's just a matter of education. Texas has been slow to come around to the medical marijuana side of the argument. I moved here in 2008 after retiring from the military. In 2007 after retiring from the military. When I got here, I noticed, there were some things that were changing. Obama became president, and then we had this explosion of dispensaries around the country. Texas is just now kind of coming around to some of this way of thinking. We've had a very conservative legislature in place for a very long time. So as our numbers grow in activists and reformers want to see change, the more success that we have around the country, we just capitalize that on in forms of business plans, and we just try to educate. I think what our biggest fault is really as reformers, to be critical about ourselves, is that we haven't done a great job of educating our legislature before this session. I think that a lot of us waited, and I even me included, kind of waited until the legislature started to meet before we started to introduce our bills and talk to them. We really should have introduced these new bills and some of these other ones that we have 2 years ago, and really politics really hard with everybody in the legislature, really hard for 2 years. We would have been more successful.
How much time is left for your session?
We meet every 2 years, and that's one of the dilemmas here in Texas. Is the legislatures meet every 2 years, and they can vote and rise up those issues through to the from the House to the Senate to the governor, but they only meet every 2 years. So it's a problem.
Yeah. So are they concluding this session soon?
Yes, they are. I don't have the dates in front of me. I can't tell you when.
Okay, but it's relatively soon, and then you've got another 2 years before we get another shot at this. So in between sessions, is there a coordinated effort to, lobby these legislators one at a time at their home office?
There have been smaller efforts over the last 2 years to do this. I think that this time there's going to be a larger grassroots, a much larger organized effort between all of us reformers. This legislative session, what was really neat about this legislative session is we all of us reformers kind of came together, and there's more of us than there have been before, for the first time, and really rallied around some of these bills. And I haven't seen that happen since before I moved here, when we had our last really big success in the Texas legislature, because it was I believe it was in 2006, we passed a law here in the state of Texas so that we could cite people for marijuana possession instead of arresting them. And that became law before I got here. And so since then, there hasn't been a lot of movement in the legislature until now. This is really this bill that we've seen testimony in this committee, and another one before this one we've had some pretty good success with. So we're just going to capitalize on this moving forward and see what we can do over the next 2 years. Now that we've rallied together and championed over this, let's say, guide on over these bills, then we can capitalize on that success and take these same people and build a larger project plan to talk to our legislatures a lot more over the next 2 years. At least that's my plan, and I'm going to work really hard, here in the state of Texas to try to communicate and bring these groups together.
Excellent. We're speaking with Larry Talley, who's with Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. You can learn more at leap.cc. And if you want to have a speaker like Larry or someone in your area to come out and speak to your local group, that's what Leap's all about, bringing, credibility to ending the prohibition of drugs. And, we don't get much better credibility than a U.S. Navy intelligence specialist. And I wanted to kind of pivot to that for a second, talk a little bit about, the international situation with respect to this war on drugs, and most specifically how that would affect Texas would be Mexico. And you guys share the largest border with Mexico there, and we report on the stories day after day of the bloodshed and torture and horror that's going on there from the Mexican cartels. Is that becoming a talking point amongst reformers? Is that something you use in discussing the legalization issue? And does it resonate?
It is something that I do talk about. We have to talk about the 60,000 plus people that have been killed in this drug war just south of the border, how we created the situation, and how we as a country, using these policies that we have in place, continue to perpetuate that. It's a very big talking point. It's hard for people here, though, as they're sitting in these Rotary clubs or watching from their computer, and they listen to my speeches and they listen to us talk. It's hard for them to visualize 60,000 people.
Yeah. That
it's hard for them to imagine the carnage and the war that's taking place just miles down south of us. So that's, I think, what the presentation does a pretty good job of, is showing some pictures and demonstrating, from my paradigm and my experience. I worked in Central and South America and in the drug war, and did a lot of stuff to help support U.S. policies in bringing the U.S. to a drug-free America by 1995, which of course was a failed mission.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out so well, and that's what brought me into over a lot of years into LEAP and where I am today. But you're right. The carnage in Mexico is really beyond belief. and those people that have worked with drug policy and have gone down there have visually seen this and know that how bad our policies really are.
Yeah. You made a quick statement there about, people can't imagine the 60,000 dead. And when I think about imagination and education and how people see the world, I point my finger at the media. And I'm wondering about the Texas media there, the local stations. Do they report on this Mexican drug war? And if they do, I noticed when the bombings happened in Boston, the media wasn't so shy about seeing, blood and carnage in the streets and bones sticking out of legs that used to be there. But we never got those shots from Iraq, Afghanistan, or this Mexican drug war. Do you think if we had a little more coverage like we had for Boston with respect to the Mexican drug war, it wouldn't be so hard for people to imagine?
I think we need to put a different face on that drug war. First of all, we send drug enforcement agents, not U.S. Army troops, down to Mexico to battle drug warriors and cartel members. Oh, look, these people are insurgents. You call them what they are, and they're insurgents. Instead of sending a drug enforcement agency down to Mexico to fight this war, if the government of Mexico wants our assistance, we should be putting military troops down there to battle these insurgents so that we can ensure the stabilization of the country of Mexico. At the same time, coupled with programs here to legalize marijuana to cut off the head off of of all of those cartels, which is the main source of their income, is bringing marijuana across the border in the United States. So there's a lot of things that we could do as a country. There's a lot of policies that we need to change in order to affect this war on drugs.
Do you think...
After all, the war on drugs is just a war. It's just another word for a war on people, because I'm going to tell you, I've been out there. I've carried a gun. I pointed it, and I pulled a trigger. I'm going to tell you that drugs do not shoot back. They just don't. People shoot back. This is a war on people. It's a war on people in Central America. It's a war on people in South America. And it's a war on people here in the United States. And our government does not need to be in a war with people here in the United States.
I'm wondering, with respect to what you said about insurgency, if we were to apply an end to prohibition in America, say we could wave the wand and get what LEAP promotes, which is, marijuana legalization and sensible regulation of other drugs. If we could take that away, take that incentive and that financing away from this insurgency, would we have to deal with it like an actual insurgency and send military troops and have us an Iraq or Afghanistan style warfare, escalating south of our border?
Well, hopefully that if we were able to come up with sensible policies that eliminated the profit, took away the profit from the cartels so that it would deflate the cartels, that the cartels would then deflate themselves, Mexico would be able to deal with those armed gangs of people that are doing those bad things, trafficking people and committing murders. Those are the things that they want to go after. And, of course, they're going to deflate when there's no money.
Yeah.
These cartels walk into towns, they buy the town, they buy the people. If they don't have money to do that, then we can certainly expect that the cartel's power is going to be greatly diminished. There's still going to be some leftover after we do this. There's going to be a transition period here in the United States and overseas, but it's easily overcome. We've done these types of things before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I say, the difference between a cartel and a gang is cash flow, and we cut off some of that cash flow. We can treat them like the gangs they are, and it's going to be a lot easier situation. Larry Talley with LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. You can find him at leap.cc or copsaylegalizedrugs.com. Do you have any public speaking appearances where people can catch you coming up pretty soon?
Absolutely. This Saturday here in the downtown Dallas, I don't know if you folks know that are listening, but Russ Billville came out to Dallas last year and he participated in our annual marijuana march. Well, we have another annual marijuana march, and it's coming up this Saturday. This Saturday, though, we're going to be in downtown Fort Worth. DFW Normal stands for Dallas Fort Worth Normal. So this year, in respect to the old Fort Worth, we're going to be out there at the Federal Plaza at noon, and we would love to have anybody that's listening to this come out and just join us. It's going to be a wonderful time. There's going to be music. There's going to be protests. There's going to be speakers. I'm going to be speaking. We have a lot of speakers. It's going to be a lot of fun. So
right.
That's my next speaking opportunity. Is going to be Saturday at 3:30 in downtown Fort Worth.
All right. Well, hope you guys have fun. May the 4th be with you, and have fun in Fort Worth on the 4th. It's like a tongue twister. Larry Talley from LEAP, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again sometime.
Thank you, Klaus.
All right, when we come back, time for a little personal radical rant. Be right back.
We'll be right back after these messages